Hi, my name is Kason Sellers. This presentation today will be going over business communication in Austria. To begin, let's first go over societal values in Austria. If you look on the right side of the slides, you will see the Hofstede 6 cultural dimensions, which score a society on 6 separate categories that can better show how these cultures and societies operate. So for the first one, power distance, Austria's power is distributed, and employees expect to be consulted about business decisions. This contrasts very strongly to the power distance in America, which is 40. Austrians lean towards taking care of their own needs as well as their family needs before addressing the needs of others. That is for the individualism score that Austria has. But as you can see, America's individualism score is much, much higher. For masculinity, a high score in masculinity shows that Austrians value living to work over working to live. Continuing with the same ideas from the last slide, we are now looking at the uncertainty avoidance score for Austria, which is a 70, which is rather high. Um, this means that they live in a rather conservative society that doesn't value new or unorthodox ideas. Next will be long-term orientation. They are accustomed to addressing situations within context to find the truth and tradition isn't heavily valued. This shows that they're very forward thinking as opposed to the 26 that the United States scored, which means that we are not forward thinking whatsoever. Finally, we have the indulgent score, which is 63 for Austria and 68 for the United States, which means that we are very similar in indulgence. Austrians act by desire about the same amount as Americans. Next, I'm going to talk shortly about business culture in Austria. To start, we have three high value traits in Austrian business culture. These are dependability, analytical thinking, as well as communication. Respect in the business world in Austria is reliant on status, rank, and education. It is important to not perform any actions that may seem aggressive while ensuring the message is accurate and concise. And finally, business people are very direct, which leads to a faster pace of discourse in the workplace. As an American in an Austrian business environment, it is important to use English sparingly if you do know German. And whenever you do have to use English, try only to use it when speaking with someone who is already a fluent English speaker. And even then, try to keep your sentences as short and concise as possible. Now I'm going to talk about first impressions for a little bit. First impressions are extremely important in Austrian business culture. Before meeting someone for the first time, a letter of introduction can be very useful, especially if you have mutual partners already, someone that can introduce you. Present your business card upon the initial meeting. Your business card does not need to be rewritten into German because a very large amount of Austrian business people do read English, so they will be able to read your business card as is. Only close friends will refer to one another by their first name, therefore use and Frau, followed by the person's family name when addressing someone. If the person has a professional title, then use the title instead of or Frau. And finally, greeting someone with a handshake is seen as polite, but men should wait for women to engage in a handshake. Body language and language in general are very important concepts whenever it comes to communication, of course. In regards to Austria, the national language of Austria is German, but within Austria, there are 9 separate German dialects that are spoken. Um, so it is very, very beneficial to have a strong understanding of German before moving to this country or going over there to do business. You'll just have a much easier time. Now for some body language stuff. The American OK sign made by forming a circle with the thumb and index finger and placing the other 3 fingers up is considered obscene and should not be used. Thumbs up will still convey approval in Austria. Physical contact is uncommon and should be avoided. And finally, eye contact should be frequent. Meetings and negotiations in Austria are very important and have their own set of rules and customs. So to start, I'm going to quickly go over like when you should have meetings. Meetings will typically be arranged between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. and between 3 and 5. Uh, you do not want to set up your meetings for that late afternoon window. That is typically when everyone will be going to lunch. Meetings should not be arranged for Friday afternoons. Business culture in Austria is very relaxed, and many business people will not even work Friday afternoons. They will just go ahead and get a head start on their weekend. When starting a meeting, you should begin with small talk to establish rapport, but as soon as the negotiation or meeting starts, the only topics that should be brought up are things that are already on the agenda. In terms of negotiations, Austrians are cooperative and believe in win-win scenarios, looking to achieve a fair deal above all else. Once a condition has been agreed upon, it is highly unlikely that the condition will be revisited, and this is all because negotiations are seen as a necessary evil in Austria, and bargaining is pretty frowned upon in general. In regards to women in business, Austria is not as established as America tends to be. Women in business have just recently made strong breakthroughs in Austria, and due to that, they still have many outdated beliefs whenever it comes to women in the business place. It is important for a woman to emphasize her ability, status, and role within the company in order to gain that respect from her male colleagues. Austria is very proactive about developing legislation that aims to establish equality while attempting to provide additional benefits to women for unpaid work, such as child rearing and single parenting. For example, new mothers in Austria can expect to receive up to 16 weeks paid leave after the birth of their child. In conclusion, I'll go over that people are much more conservative and will not take well to someone that acts as a stereotypical outgoing American. It is important to still act as though you're an American. Don't try and just pretend you're Austrian, but don't you have to understand that they are much more laid back society. They're not as engaged as Americans tend to be, and it is important to address them as such. Making a good first impression by wearing professional attire and using good manners should be a primary focus when attempting to establish business relationships. Um, this first impression will probably be the most important thing that will decide whether someone wants to create a business relationship with you or not. American negotiating tactics of being forceful, explicit, or urgent in any way will be highly frowned upon and will most likely ruin any chance at a relationship being formed. This is because, as we went over in the meetings and negotiations slide, Austrians do not enjoy bargaining, whereas Americans, they're looking to get like the best deal possible, even if it means that the other person included in the deal isn't getting as good of a deal. And finally, foreign business people should look to assimilate themselves into the Austrian business environment without mimicking those around them. It is very important to not just try and copy people. That will be taken extremely poorly. You should simply look and see how people carry themselves and take those traits and apply them to yourself so that you can fit in better.